Welcome to the Bare Metal Cybersysm Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Security cannot be effective when it operates in isolation. For protection efforts to be sustainable and scalable, security requirements must be integrated directly into the processes and systems that drive daily operations. The purpose of integration is to ensure that security is not an afterthought or a bolt-on. It becomes part of how the business works. When security is embedded into existing workflows, it reduces risk at the source by applying controls precisely where access, data handling, or decision-making takes place. This approach improves adoption and compliance because users are not asked to step outside familiar tools or processes to meet policy requirements. Instead, protection becomes part of the natural workflow. Integration also reduces the need for constant oversight, enabling continuous enforcement with minimal friction. By aligning security with enterprise governance, risk, and compliance expectations, integrated controls support both operational effectiveness and audit readiness. When done right, integration enables security to scale with the organization, supporting growth, change, and innovation without sacrificing protection. To integrate security effectively, organizations must first identify the business processes where integration will deliver the greatest impact. Several functions stand out as high-priority areas: human resources processes, such as onboarding and offboarding, control access, lifecycle and require close coordination with identity management. Procurement and vendor management, often led by finance or legal departments, introduce third-party risk and require controls for due diligence, contract clauses, and risk assessments. Project management and change control, usually owned by IT or project management offices, are critical for embedding security into technology rollouts. The software development lifecycle, governed by DevOps and engineering teams, must include secure design, testing, and deployment practices. Asset management and data handling, typically overseen by IT and operations teams, touch virtually every part of the organization and require clear control over inventories, classification, and usage. By focusing integration efforts on these core processes, security teams can build protection into the places where business decisions and risks converge. Before inserting controls, the existing process must be analyzed in detail. This involves mapping the workflow from start to finish, identifying inputs, outputs, decision points, approvals, and dependencies. Each step should be reviewed to identify where sensitive systems, data, or permissions are touched. Are privileged accounts provisioned? Are external systems accessed? Are customer records handled or modified? Once these points are identified, security teams must evaluate how well current practices align with policy, standards, and best practices, such as missing reviews, undocumented decisions, or unmonitored access, must be noted and prioritized based on exposure to regulatory, financial, or reputational risk. Processes that touch sensitive data, critical infrastructure, or key revenue channels should be prioritized for early integration. This ensures that protection is focused where it matters most. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. The next step is embedding security controls into those processes. This may involve inserting checkpoints into standard operating procedures, such as requiring security sign-off before a vendor is approved or mandating identity verification before system access is granted. Automation can be used wherever possible to reduce burden. For example, role-based provisioning can automatically assign entitlements during onboarding, or automated scans can flag non-compliant assets during change control. Conditional approvals may be introduced to flag exceptions that fall outside normal risk thresholds. Controls must be tailored based on the risk level, complexity, and operational constraints of each process. High-risk functions require stricter enforcement, while low-risk areas may benefit from lightweight validation. Policies should be integrated directly into tools through templates, workflows, or validation rules. For instance, procurement platforms can require supplier security assessments before allowing purchase orders to be finalized. This embedded approach ensures that security is enforced by default, not by manual review after the fact. Technology plays a key role in making this integration efficient and sustainable. Workflow platforms such as ServiceNow, Jira, or other enterprise systems can be configured to enforce policy compliance as part of task execution. For example, a project approval workflow might include fields for security risk classification or compliance sign-off. Automated access reviews and change validations can be triggered based on user activity or system modification. With identity management, configuration management, databases, and endpoint monitoring systems, ensures that security has the context it needs to enforce the right controls at the right time. Logging, alerting, and reporting should be built into these platforms to ensure traceability. Dashboards can show which requests are approved, which are pending, and where controls are failing. Role-based access ensures that process owners, security analysts, and compliance teams can view the data they need without overexposing sensitive information. Choosing the right platforms and configuring them appropriately is key to maintaining governance without introducing complexity. Collaboration with process owners is essential throughout the integration effort. Security teams cannot dictate change from the outside. They must work with operational leaders to design controls that support business goals. This requires clear communication about why a control is needed, what risks it addresses, and what behavior is expected at each step. Security leaders must also understand what level of friction is acceptable and what trade-offs are necessary. Documenting shared roles and responsibilities ensures that no task is left ambiguous and that both security and business teams are aligned. Iterative rollouts allow for adjustments based on feedback and minimize disruption. For example, piloting new onboarding controls with one department before scaling across the enterprise allows issues to be addressed before they affect everyone. Engagement, empathy, and shared ownership are the cornerstones of successful integration. Training and awareness must also be embedded into the process, not delivered as standalone initiatives. Role-specific guidance should be built directly into workflows. For instance, tooltips can explain why a certain field is required, or prompts can remind users of policy obligations during task execution. When onboarding new hires or rolling out new tools, integrated training should explain not just how to use the system, but how security fits into that usage. Periodic refreshers, delivered through process tools or triggered by user actions, help reinforce behaviors over time. Messaging should emphasize how integration reduces both personal and organizational risk. When users understand that security protects them as well as the business, participation improves. Security teams should also create channels for feedback so that usability issues, confusion, or process gaps can be reported and addressed quickly. Awareness is not just about knowing the rules, it's about understanding how those rules apply in the flow of work. Ongoing monitoring is needed to ensure that integration is working as intended. Security teams should track metrics such as completion rates, bypass rates, and error rates for embedded controls. For example, how many access requests are approved without review? How many vendor assessments are skipped or delayed? Compliance with automated controls, such as timely access revocation, should be tracked and compared against targets. User satisfaction surveys can provide insight into how well processes are working and where friction exists. Trends in incident data, audit findings, or policy violations should be analyzed for patterns linked to control misalignment or process breakdown. This data can be used to justify enhancements, reallocate resources, or simplify unnecessary steps. Over time, the goal is to evolve from reactive policy enforcement to proactive performance tuning, using metrics to identify not just problems, but opportunities for smoother, more effective control integration. Despite the benefits, resistance to integration is common and must be addressed thoughtfully. Some teams may view security as a blocker or fear that controls will slow them down. Security leaders must clarify how integration supports efficiency, accountability, and organizational trust. When needed, offer alternative workflows for special cases, such as emergency change processes, with risk-based approval. Demonstrating how controls reduce exposure or improve audit outcomes helps win support. Requirements should be revisited regularly and adapted as operational needs evolve. For example, if a process becomes more automated or decentralized, controls may need to shift from manual checks to system-based enforcement. Leadership support is critical. When executives reinforce expectations for integrated security, Other departments are more likely to cooperate. Resistance should be handled with empathy, facts, and a willingness to adapt without compromising risk posture. As the organization grows and changes, security integration must evolve too. Mergers, system upgrades, and business model changes all affect workflows. Controls must be updated accordingly. Integration points should be reassessed during strategic planning, procurement cycles, or digital transformation initiatives. Expanding integration into new functions such as AI development, data science teams, or new global markets ensures that security keeps pace with innovation. Feedback from process owners and end users should guide improvement in scaling. Integration must be a default requirement in process design. New systems, services, or workflows should not go live without documented security checkpoints. This proactive approach avoids the costly and often ineffective practice of retrofitting controls after implementation. By embedding security as a design principle, not an afterthought, organizations ensure that protection is continuous, scalable, and aligned with how the business operates. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal CyberSys Prepcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com.